And a lot of people do a lot of work over a 4 year span, indeed a longer than a 4 year span, in order for it to
Hmm.
happen. There are times when being dumbstruck isn't such a bad thing, because actually the events of the match don't especially need any further word. And I do question whether the human race is being sensible in trying gradually to render itself redundant.
The man we grew up listening to, his face recognizable, his voice even more. Peter Drury on lakhs of radios, Peter Drury on millions of televisions. The evergreen voice present during the deafening silences caused by losses, the clear voice during the unbridled chaos after wins. I won't have to say his name again, ladies and gentlemen. It's Peter the Poet Drury. Hello, sir. How are you?
How are you, Omkar? Very nice to be with you.
Well, as you guys might know, Peter sir is a really famous commentator, and that was exactly going to be my first question: is can we know a bit more about your journey, how you aspired to be a commentator, and where you got the inspiration from?
Well, I grew up listening to a lot of sport on the radio and watching some on the television as well. But when I was a young boy, there was much less live sports, certainly much less live football on the television, and radio was my favourite medium really, and I listened to a lot of it then. I was a keen sportsman, but not an especially talented one. There was never any chance of me becoming a sort of top sportsman at any game really. Um, and I had no particular ambition to become a commentator. It was just something which, like children the world over, I did while I was playing. If I was playing cricket and played a good shot, I commentated on it, and if I scored a goal, I commentated on it. But that's what everybody does when they're growing up, don't they? Um, and it was really only after I'd been to university that I thought I would have a try at getting into the world of sports reporting, whether it be newspapers or broadcast or whatever. And I had a couple of lucky breaks, and eventually, after 2 or 3 years, I broke into the BBC um, locally, and progressed within the BBC in radio for 7 or 8 years, and then got a chance in television just before the 1998 World Cup in France, and I've been in television ever since then.
Not only television, sir, you've been on radios, televisions. We've even seen you in the video game PES, which is when I first heard your commentary. And it is, I think, commentators provide something else to the game. They provide storytelling to the game. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, our job is to tell a story. That's what the commentator's job is to identify with the narrative and articulate that narrative as best we can. Um, of course, we are at the mercy of the story, so it's great to have fantastic raw material. If there's a great game, it's an easy story to tell. And sometimes we are not guilty, but it's a fact of life that we find ourselves um, enjoying the reflected glory of a great game, which had nothing to do with us. Actually, we just happened to be fortunate to be there when the game took place. So yeah, our job is to tell the story, and it's a much easier, much more fulfilling job when the story is a good one.
You know, Speaking of good stories, the best I have seen is my favorite player, Leo Messi. In India, many half the kids are inspired by Messi, half are by Ronaldo, because that's how we become fans. We didn't have the local teams in the early 2010s to support, and there was not much support for them. So we chose our own idols in the two goats we had. So how did you feel commentating for the World Cup final? I mean, there could be no story better, right?
Oh well, it was sort of almost unreal. It was talk about a great story. It was a story that I think if you had written it down beforehand and and offered it as a script for a theatre or for cinema, people would have laughed at it because life never works out like that.
Hmm.
It was so ridiculously good as to be beyond the realms of our imagination, really. Um, for Kylian Mbappe to score a hat trick and lose, Messi to presumably round off his international career. He hasn't said it's finished yet, by the way, so perhaps there'll be more. But for Messi to have that crowning moment in the World Cup final and Argentina to win it in front of all of those supporters was just an extraordinary thing to behold. It was a huge privilege to be there. The curiosity of the game itself, of course, Omkar, is that with 10 minutes to play, it was actually quite an unremarkable World Cup final. Argentina were 2-0 up. France hadn't been especially good. Yes, Messi had scored his goal, which was lovely, but Di Maria's goal was a more beautiful one. And Argentina were going to win a fairly standard football match quite straightforwardly. But then, of course, Kylian Mbappe intervened and the whole thing went crazy.
Exactly. And I mean, that's exactly the job of a commentator is to not be dumbstruck. But have you ever been dumbstruck by such footballing moments where even the commentator couldn't say anything?
There are times when being dumbstruck isn't such a bad thing, because actually the events of the match don't especially need any further words. The match looks after itself, and that World Cup final was perhaps an example. You know, Mbappe point of view is kind of self-evident. But you're right. If a commentator said absolutely nothing, it would seem curious, and so you try to apply the sort of fundamental law of commentary, which is speak if you feel you can, in some sense, add to the picture. And the pictures were so remarkable in that World Cup final. It was quite testing to add to them, because you know what can you add? But you can only be authentic and true to yourself, and you can only feel the moment and get carried by it. And it you know, it's like surfing a wave. Really, it was beautiful to just get carried along by the emotion.
I mean, you spoke about getting carried away by emotions, surfing the wave, even watching the things, just witnessing the things. Do you feel that as a commentator is a really good job to witness history in front of your eyes? I just feel that it's a really good job. If you're articulate enough, it's a really good place to just witness the game and express yourself if you're fond of that.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It is a great privilege. And you have to remember that, I believe, with absolute humility, because I say again, the great sporting events have nothing to do with the commentator. They happen regardless. That, you know, Messi scored those goals, Mbappe scored those goals. No commentator in the world scored those goals, and so it's an immense privilege to be sitting in a really good seat at a grand stadium watching these historical sporting events. And sometimes all of us who are lucky enough to do that, you know, pinch ourselves and say, wow, what have we done to deserve this? And you just have to remember to enjoy it, because so many millions of people around the world would love, of course, the same privilege.
Of course. I mean, just sitting in the commentator's box. Can you describe the commentator's box, please, for a person who wants to see it?
Well, at a World Cup, there are rows and rows of commentators from all over the world, from, you know, all of the, it's like a Tower of Babel. It's you know, hundreds of languages being spoken in little sections, in little glass sections, side by side by side, all with 2 or 3 people yapping away in their various languages. We probably wouldn't understand each other, but I could be sat next to commentators from Poland or Croatia or, you know, your part of the world or anywhere, foreign conversations happening, all of which get swallowed up, of course, by the great crowd noise, and I suppose contribute to the crowd noise. But there's a sort of sense of community amongst the commentators. You know, we all sit down next to each other, look along the row and see another one, and smile and wish each other good luck and all of that sort of thing. And it's a very exciting place to be.
It seems like a really healthy and exciting workplace to be in, you know.
Yeah.
And a good icebreaker for multitudes of people.
Sorry, I missed that, Omkar.
It seems like a good icebreaker. You know, you can just meet so many people being a commentator.
Yeah, and listen, it's a fantastic way to earn a living. because you are a part of this. As a World Cup, certainly you're a part of a sort of community of broadcasters and indeed journalists. You go into the big media centres before the games, and you commune with friends and meet new friends and swap ideas and converse about the game and all of that. And then, yes, you go up to the commentary position, and there you are, sort of sharing the experience with like-minded people. And it's a great place to be.
It's like you're a compare in the world's biggest party, I feel. You're the MC holding the mic, describing what's going on.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. But again, I have to say that it's really important, if you are that compare, to understand that that's all you are. The party is the party, and it's really important to be aware that it's just a bit part. It's a bit part. You're handing over to the people who are really doing it, who are the players on the field.
honestly, last World Cup made me see that there's just so much of effort involved in making a World Cup. I mean, if you look at the workers, not just the workers, by the way, the workers whose lives were laid down, that was really depressing. But if you leave that aside, there's just a huge ecosystem building so much in tournaments. So just entering that, even a commentator, let it be a commentator, the person making arrangements for the commentator, everyone plays their own part to make this beautiful celebration.
That is so true, Omkar. You're absolutely right, and you're right too to reference some of the awkward issues around, particularly this World Cup we've just had. It's a massive logistical exercise. It's a massive human exercise, and a lot of people do a lot of work over a 4-year span, indeed a longer than a 4-year span, in order for it to happen. The organizational effort for the next World Cup hasn't only just begun now. It's begun, before the last World Cup was played. It's huge. I don't think people possibly, and why should they, understand quite how huge it is. Because, as you rightly say, there's the big picture stuff. There is the building of the stadia. There is the impact on the host country itself, on the communities within it, on the people who work within it. And then there's the moment of when the world arrives and the games have to kick off and the broadcasts have to happen and the teams have to be able to train and the teams have to be able to stay in a hotel and the referees have to be considered and the stewards it's absolutely huge logistical exercise. And when the final whistle is blown on the last night, I think an awful lot of people go and curl up in a dark room and have to take months to recover.
So true. I mean, I'm not even kidding, but most football fans, they plan their lives according to the World Cups. That they plan their life till the next World Cup, till 2026 World Cup. This is what I have to achieve. After that, and suddenly when the World Cup is over, everyone just feels blank for a few moments. And my next question was going to be regarding this: that because you're a commentator, do you feel that you have to be an extrovert and you should be good at talking to everyone?
No, I don't feel that. I think as a commentator, it's important to be authentic, to be yourself, not to pretend to be something you're not. And so, bearing that in mind, I think whatever you do, wherever you go in life, you should attempt to be just true to yourself. If you're pretending to be something you're not, you'll soon be found out. It's best just to be the person you are. And to try and be the best version of the person you are, whether that is extrovert or introvert. There are an awful lot of commentators who are totally different people, and this is not to say they're being inauthentic, but who come to life when the microphone's placed in their hand, who are, when the microphone is not in their hand, quiet, reserved, and anything but extrovert. So you go to work, you do it the best you can, and then you come away from work and you try to be the best human being you can. There's no sense in which I think you should go to any great lengths to project an image or to be different in any way.
It's people like you, Ray Hudson, Anant Tyagi is a commentator in India. and Martin Tyler. You guys are the people who made me think that commentary can also be like an art. So do you believe that it's an art? And can you, the main question to you was, since you watch so much of football, do you believe sports is also an expression of art?
I certainly believe sport for me is where art meets science,
Oh,
because there's so much precision. There are angles, there are numbers, there are, let's face it, the human body, it's biological, it's chemical. It's very, very scientific sport. But it is also beautifully artistic. And so, yes, there is certainly a large element of art in sport. Whether you call commentary an art, I'm not so sure. Again, there's a degree to which it's just functional, informational, passing on statistics, identifying the player who's got the ball. Those are the fundamentals of commentary. And I think for me or anyone else to call it art who actually does it might risk sounding a little bit pretentious. I would say it's more instinct than art. If you set out to be arty or in some sense artful around commentary, the chances are you're putting it on. I think it's
you're
better.
forcing yourself.
Yeah, you're forcing it, exactly. It's better if you allow it just to be instinct.
Yeah, because I mean, not every sentence can be a poetry, right, out of your mouth. It just has to be more
Very
special.
few can. Very few can. And and I say again, if you set out to force it, you use the word force, and you're absolutely right. If you set out to force it, then you're heading for trouble. And not every game is the World Cup final. And if people are, from a commentator's point of view, if people remember occasional things you say around a goal or a great moment in a football match, well, that's lovely. But I would also say to you that out of 100 goals, as a commentator, one or two you might be really proud of that are really good and people consider to be memorable. 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 you might think, oh, I wasn't very good there, and the other 95 are just regular, just regular and routine or whatever. And it's that's the truth of it. If you try to pretend that every moment is the greatest moment, then no moment is the greatest
No
moment.
moment is the greatest moment.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, the 1-2% which you mentioned. So are commentators really sometimes embarrassed of their reactions to goals?
Of course. I can go and sit in my car after a football match and think, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. I certainly often go and sit in my car and think, oh, I wish I'd remembered to say that. That would have been a better line. I wish I'd expressed it better or differently. So yeah, I mean, we're a long way short of well, I speak for myself, a long way short of perfection, and there's very often regret at a sort of missed opportunity. Never mind a mistake, and of course we all make mistakes from time to time. But that's human, everybody makes mistakes, and with experience you learn to forgive yourself for mistakes eventually. As a younger broadcaster, actually, if I made a mistake, I used to be in pieces for days. But now if I make a mistake, I'm old enough to realize that that's the way of the world. I'm a human being and human beings are flawed.
Also, you must be better at covering it up. Even if it's a mistake, even if you start the sentence midway, you can just change the direction totally. Can you?
Change direction midway through?
No, what I meant is if you start reacting to something and you don't know what to say next, you can, because of your experience, you can cover your mistake up.
Well, yes, that I guess that is something that comes with experience. But again, it's not foolproof entirely. It can go wrong. Many times I start a sentence and then I think I've no idea how I'm going to finish this sentence, and it's a moment you panic inside. But yes, I mean, of course, the more you do anything, the more you learn to deal with snags and problems as they come up. So yes, experience in all of these things is handy. but sadly, you never reach a point of perfection.
You're always striving to be perfect. And well, I saw a YouTube short or a reel. I don't know if it was about you or Martin Tyler, but there was, you guys have 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages, where you scribble down so many words, so many adjectives, so many historical facts or theoretical facts about the players. How can you prepare for moments like that? I mean, it must be really tough to find the stats on the pages, right? Or is it something you can't prepare for?
Well, you can't
What?
really prepare for the moments.
Mhm.
You prepare for the match, and in terms of the history and the stats and so on, you try to ensure that you have every eventuality covered. So, somebody scores. This is basic stuff. When did they last score? Has it been, or how many goals have they scored this season? If it's somebody's birthday, if two teams are meeting for the 5th time this year, all of that sort of stuff you can prepare. What you can't prepare, except in the sense of having your head in the right space and understanding the narrative and knowing what it all means, is the moment. When the ball hits the net, you cannot have foretold how, when, and in what circumstances the ball is going to hit the net. So those are the moments when I talk about instinct. Those are the moments when you have to trust your instinct to kick in. And that's why it's nerve-wracking, because just because it kicked in last time doesn't mean it's going to kick in next time. And you're trusting yourself to take for granted something which sometimes might let you down, and certainly sometimes operates better than other times, which is why you can have a really good day when you think, I've expressed the goal really well. But equally, you can have a very ordinary day where you come away from what was a very good game and think, I could have done that better, because your instinct maybe hasn't reacted in the same way. Maybe you're tired. Maybe maybe your head's not quite switched on, and all of those things. So, in that regard, and only in that regard, because I draw no parallels, but it's a bit like playing. Even the great players, Messi gives the ball away sometimes. Ronaldo gives the ball away sometimes. Doesn't mean they don't go on and score a hat-trick or whatever, and doesn't mean that they're bad players, but they're not flawless players. There is no such thing as that. And all of the top professional footballers have a bad day, and move on from it. And I guess that's like anybody in any job anywhere in the world. You strive to be the best you can on any given day, but I think we all have to forgive ourselves a little bit more readily when we don't have the perfect day.
Also, not everyone can have a perfect day every day, but I feel it's these imperfections which highlight our greatness even further. And by that, what I mean is, personally, I think AI can also commentate well on games. If you see, do you know ChatGPT by any chance? The new trend.
Do I know?
ChatGPT.
I don't think so.
ChatGPT is an AI software which, if you ask questions to, replies you back with a good answer framed from Google. It researches the answers on its own, it researches code on its own and gives you the answers. So this is just showing that AI is catching up with humans. And personally, I feel that AI can never catch up with human commentators. But what is your opinion on this? Do you feel AI commentators can replace humans?
Well,
Or
Omkar,
can
you're
do
much
it?
younger than me. You're younger than me, and so you probably understand this stuff much, much more than me. In fact, I'm certain you do. But I've heard a little bit about it, and I've often joked with my colleagues that one day they won't need us anymore because a computer will do our job. And that may be true. That may be true. Insofar as I understand the world, which is in a much more old-fashioned way than you do, I don't think that AI has yet caught up emotionally with human beings, and sport has a lot to do with emotion. So whilst I dare say a computer can learn to say the words and identify the players and all of that, and indeed could no doubt be told that it's a goal, so be a bit more excited and all of that stuff, I doubt that it can yet have the emotional intelligence that a human commentator can have. Now, that's not to say that somewhere down the road someone won't develop it, because I dare say they can. But, that's not just about commentators, that's about the whole world. And I do question whether the human race is being sensible in trying gradually to render itself redundant. In the end, computers can do everybody's job. So what's the point of us as people? But anyway, that's a very deep
Existential question. Yeah. Coming back to something lighter, what do you feel are the most important skills for for an aspiring person to go into commentary?
Well, I think obviously you've got to have a genuine love for the sport, because as I mentioned earlier, if you're pretending, you'll get caught out. You will. There's no point being anything other than authentic. There are many people who would love to do this job, and if you don't really love the prospect of it, then leave it to someone who does, I would say. Don't do it because you want to become in some sense well known, because that's fame, notoriety, whatever you call it, is in itself not particularly appealing, or at least it's not to me. Honestly, I prefer a quiet life, thank you. Do it because you love the sport, and maybe because you love the words. And I'm lucky because I do love words, and I love football, and I can go to work every week and express those twin passions, really. So that would be my advice. Just be real, be honest with yourself, and don't pretend to do it. Really invest yourself in it, because that's what you think you want to do.
Could not have had better guidance from a better person. But wait, oh my God, I forgot my last question. My last question was that, do you feel that you owe something to the fans while you're speaking? Do you feel that you owe them a good game? I mean, you obviously must have that pressure, right?
Well, yes, obviously the audience is your prime consideration. If you think too deeply about the size and depth of the audience, you go nowhere, because the truth is it's very hard to please all of the people all of the time, because people have their preferences, their tastes, and one person's favorite commentator might be another person's least favorite commentator, and so as you do the work, of course you want to please as much of your audience as you can, and if you get the sense that the audience is happy with you, then that is extremely fulfilling. Equally, if you get the sense that the audience isn't happy with you, that can be quite crushing of your spirit. But I go back again to repeat myself and to say, all you can be in the end is authentic. And if you come away and think, well, I did that the way that I think it should be done, and I believed in what I said, and I wasn't making it up or pretending or anything else, I was true to myself, then that's about as good as you can do. And then you have to hope that the audience was satisfied by it. But of course, listen, the audience is the thing that matters. That's who you are serving.
So true. Football is for the fans. Anyway, that's all of my questions which I wanted to ask you, and I really enjoyed this discussion. It has been a dream come true, and I can finally rest saying that I got 1/3 the time at least of the total 90 which the football pitch gets. So I mean, really, thanks a lot for this, sir. It has been a huge inspiration. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Omkar. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for taking the trouble to be in touch. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Peter. See you.
Thank you.